respected Sri Arpit Chatterjee, respected Dr. Sunil Pandey, respected Sri Surinder Sood, respected Dr. Nancy Sharma ji, and my dear students. It's always a very enriching and a humbling experience to be addressing a young crowd. You know, when I come to colleges and undergraduate institutions, I often feel tempted to go back in life 26, 27 years, because you are an empowered generation. The kind of access you have to information, the multiple choices that you have. Unfortunately, we didn't have it in our time. But yes, with choices come challenges, with choices come dilemmas, so that also adds to a lot of complications. Even as we are speaking, you know, both my previous esteemed speakers had mentioned about the ongoing Israel-Iran war. You may not be aware of, I need to be aware of, because, you know, I'm in real time, I keep getting feeds, news feeds. Today, North Korea has also attacked Japan a few hours ago. So North Korea has also unleashed its missiles on Japan. So at a time when the entire world seems to be playing perverse war games, India stands as the strongest proponent of peace. India stands as an apostle of peace, which the entire world is secretly envying. And I think that is the hallmark of a stable, visionary leadership which India has had for the last many years, and even our previous prime ministers, even our previous governments were far more reasonable than some of the other world leaders whom you are witnessing right now, who believe that, you know, war is the ultimate passion, or war is the ultimate, you know, sport which the world should be indulging in. So as we speak today, like everything else comes to an end, the war will also hopefully come to an end. It will leave its impact, it will leave its repercussions for us to handle. But it's important to not lose sight of the larger picture. And the larger picture is the next 2 decades, which are crucial for India and which are equally crucial for you. India enjoys a certain demographic advantage today. What does the demographic advantage mean? Which means that the working age population, the population which is between 15 to 64 years of age, which adds greater productivity to the country, to the economy, is far higher than the other age groups. China had this advantage, Japan had this advantage 3 decades ago. You know, India is going to have it for the next 2 decades. It is likely to peak in 2041 and you know, likely to start declining 2055. This is a time when you know, the country is at a very interesting, at a very promising inflection point. We are the 4th largest economy right now, all set to be the number 3 economy in max the next 3 years. But also, what is important is that the last 1 decade has gone into building a foundation which will be fully prepared by 2030, 2031 to launch our own missiles. And these won't be war missiles, these will be economic missiles. These will be developmental missiles, these will be innovation missiles, which will set a new world order. Because I've always maintained the maximum work goes into building a foundation. So, you know, if we had a 40% sanitation cover in 2014, and if we have 100% sanitation cover now, if more than 55 crore people were out of formal banking system in 2014, who have all been included now, if 40 lakh crore worth of Indian rupees has been directly put into the hands of poor through our digital mechanism, 𝐻𝐿, which is based on the 𝐻𝐿 Aadhaar mobile trinity. If we are the largest data users in the world, if more than 100 plus unicorns have sprang up in the last 10 decades, in the last 10 years, the future of this country simply cannot be negative. The future has to be bright, which is where the onus comes on all of you to play an active role in the journey ahead. So what is Viksit Bharat? It's very important to address that question. There are different connotations of it. One is obviously the economic connotation where we are hoping that we would be anywhere between a $25 trillion economy to a $35 trillion economy from a $4.3 trillion economy that we are right now. But economic targets can be very misleading. Because if, God forbid, the current war goes on to virtually become a World War III, it will lead to depletion of massive economic resources. So more importantly, it's about happy individuals. It is about self-equipped individuals. And more importantly, it's about a secure country. There is an acronym, I have believed in, there is an acronym called STITCH, I call it STITCH, which is a very crucial component, a very pivotal component of this Viksit Bharat journey, where S stands for security, T stands for technology, I stands for infrastructure, I stands for innovation. C stands for culture, because obviously with all the visible developmental aspects, visible developmental changes you see, you need to be firmly rooted in your culture. The moment you set aside your cultural moorings, your cultural entrenchment, that is where the decay of a society and a nation starts. And H is for health. Both the positive changes which are coming in the health sector, as well as to restore and take care of your health, because this generation is facing unique challenges. The amount of time you spend on screen, the amount of time that you spend on AI, the kind of radiation that is entering into your bodies, that will have its own challenge. And that is where the other aspect of health, which is yoga and healing, as a natural practice to be adhered to on a daily basis, will become important. So let me focus on S. S stands for security. And when we talk about security, it is not only about military security, it is not only about protecting our borders, which we saw last year. In fact, last few years have witnessed many conflicts, so the importance of security cannot be emphasized enough in the contemporary world. We saw Operation Sindoor last year, where in response to the killing of 26 Indians in Pahalgam, we retaliated with Operation Sindoor, where 100 plus terrorists of Pakistan who were responsible for terror acts dating back to either 1999, when most of you were not born. I'm sure all of you over here were born, but I'm sure none of you remember the dark days of the Kandahar hijack, where for almost a week, entire NCR, entire country was, the mood was absolutely gloomy. We did not know whether 200 odd people on the hijacked Kandahar aircraft would survive or not. So Operation Sindoor has neutralized terrorists dating back to even, who were involved in terror acts dating back to late 1990s, including the Kandahar hijack. That is the success of the nation's security policy. But more importantly, future wars are going to be fought on the issue of energy. And energy security is what will define the health, the prosperity of a nation from here. Which is evident if you have been closely following the news and news debates in the last few days. The entire world is grappling with an acute energy crisis. When we talk of energy, it covers diverse areas. Obviously, it covers electricity, it covers, fuel in all its forms and permutations. And of course, it takes into account the need for converting to renewable energy to protect the climate. Now, obviously, since the Strait of Hormuz, through which 30% of crude oil shipping takes place, is largely blocked, India is one of the very few countries who in the last few days have got permission to move our stuck tankers through there. The process has begun, and we are hoping that in the next 3 to 4 days, our 20-odd tankers carrying crude oil and LPG will safely reach our coast. But energy security becomes the most, even, if you ask me, it's even more complex and more challenging than military security. Military security is something which all the nations have been preparing for over the last few years. But energy security, given the way some countries and some leaders, local leaders have, taken to war as a passion, one doesn't know whether war is going to become a norm in the future. And that is where energy security becomes most important. What have we done for energy security? Very simple. From 14 crore LPG connections in 2014, today we have 33 crore LPG connections. So obviously some of the glitches that you are experiencing in the last few days because of delay in gas cylinder deliveries, one of the reasons, if I may be very candid to admit, is also the 100% increase in gas cylinders, because obviously pre-2014, when more than 50% of the houses did not have gas cylinders, they would anyway employ coal, they would anyway employ electric heaters, which were very expensive. Electric heaters at least was very expensive. So yes, India is very closely dealing with the situation, and that is where the solution to energy security also in the present situation comes through very calibrated, very nuanced, multi-engagement. Now, our opposition leaders obviously have been demanding to know which side of the conflict are we on. Why is it necessary for us to take a side? I think India has moved a very long way from virtue signaling, phony non-alignment, to conscious nation-first multi-alignment which protects our national interest. What is it at stake for India? Two things primarily: the safety of 90 lakh Indians stranded in the Gulf countries and in West Asia, and number two, ensuring that our energy supplies reach the Indian coast uninterrupted, our economic journey, our economic activity is not impacted. We are ensuring that. We have paid a condolence to slain Iranian leader Khamenei. Our foreign secretary went to the Iran embassy to pay a condolence. Is it important? Does the opposition of this country expect Khamenei's picture to be put on parliament, in our parliament? I'm sure that answers your question. India is treading a a very fine balancing act. We have no inhibitions in saying Israel is a friend. We have no inhibitions in saying Iran is a friend. We have no inhibitions in saying Russia is a friend. We have no inhibitions in saying Ukraine is a friend. Our interest, the protection of our interest is sacrosanct, and I think being positively selfish to protect the interest of our people is not a mistake. If our previous governments have done that mistake, we are not responsible for that. We have corrected it in the last 12 years. And that explains the reason why at least 12, and probably more to that, 12 or 13 mass evacuations of Indians have successfully taken place from conflict zones, and we have ensured that everybody stranded over here, in the conflict zones and in need of help is brought back to the country. When it comes to security, I don't know how many of you have been privy to or closely witnessed Naxal violence. Naxalism is a problem, is a scourge which has existed in India from 1967. What started off as an unsuspecting peasant movement, where a few groups of people assembled together to protest for peasants' rights, was eventually hijacked by left-leaning politicians and political parties in India, and over the decades, over the years, it transformed into mass insurgency across the country, killing 15,000 people. The years between 2010 to 2013, many of you must have been very small kids over here, but again, all of you must be aware of it. The years between 2010 to 2013 were some of the worst years from the national security point of view. While we were witnessing terror acts from Pakistan on the one hand, in the interiors, in the jungles of Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh and Orissa and Jharkhand, tribals and poor were being butchered by Naxals, India's own, domestic terrorists, in the most ruthless manner. In 2010 alone, in a span of 7 weeks, in April, 75 CRPF Jawans were killed by Naxals, and in May that year, a train running between Mumbai and Kolkata was attacked where 148 passengers were killed. And at JNU campus, there were some students who were celebrating the killings of these citizens by the Naxals, whom we very rightly call the urban Naxals. On 31st March this year, Naxalism is going to be history. Home Minister 𝐼.𝐷 will be declaring India as a Naxal free country. Now, many of you would not realize the impact of it. From 100 odd districts in 2014 which were impacted by Naxal violence, today there is barely 1 or 1.5 districts which are impacted by it. Imagine the kind of economic opportunities which are being generated. Gadchiroli in Maharashtra, which was one of the worst impacted districts, is now giving way to a steel plant which is coming up with an investment of 10,000 crores. Imagine, the kind of employment opportunities that would generate in that entire radius of 50 to 100 kilometers. Bastar is today known for Bastar Olympics, India's first tribal Olympics, where many of the participants are ex-Naxals. I take this opportunity to acquaint you, since I straddle 2 or 3 different worlds, one as an author, one as a politician, the third as a both, as author, politician, or politician, author. I take this opportunity to acquaint you with my new book, Naxal Terror Vanquished. which would tell you the story of how India, through its compromising attitude over many decades, gave way to one of the most dangerous forms of internal militancy, which killed 15,000 people, which included ex-Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, 𝐕𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐤 which included the son of ex-CM of Jharkhand, Babulal Marandi. 15,000 people were killed. This book is a tribute to all of those families which were impacted, to all the martyrs. A Naxal Mukt Bharat. A Naxal Mukt Bharat brings a sense of closure, it brings a sense of justice to all of those families. And it happened because of a zero tolerance approach towards terror by Prime Minister Modi. If you may, before I move ahead, if you may just place it is over here. Since all of you today have mobile phones, unlike our generation, which used to be aware of these things after 10 days, when we would find out from the newspaper, then we go to the bookstores. The book is up for pre-order. It will be out sometime in April, and the formal event to which all of you are invited will take place sometime in May after the assembly elections in 4 states. Dr. Alok Trivedi, who is sitting over here, is my co-author of the Hindi version of it. The Hindi version will come out May end sometime. But like I mentioned, the security aspect of ending Naxalism is one part of the issue. The threat from urban Naxals, those people who are white-collar terrorists, those who roam around in some of our most intellectual campuses, secretly intellectualizing the killings, justifying the killings of their own citizens. I think the threat, and I will name some of these urban Naxals. Somebody who dreams about removing Chicken Neck. Chicken Neck corridor is a 22-kilometer stretch, land stretch, which connects India with the rest of the northeastern states. So somebody who fantasizes that he would cut off the Chicken Neck corridor from India so that the northeast is completely runs out of supplies. That person is a Naxal terrorist. Somebody who fantasizes that Kashmir will be an independent country, that person is an urban Naxal. But at the same time, that political leader who goes around the world saying that India's democracy is dead and that foreign powers should come and intervene to ensure that democracy is there in our country is the biggest urban Naxal. Unfortunately, some of the countries which have had such irresponsible leaders have paid the price. I am told that the leader of opposition in Venezuela used to do something similar. He used to go around saying that, Venezuela is the worst country, Venezuela has no democracy. Eventually, you have seen what happened in Venezuela. There was a coup by America, which was supported by certain sections of the opposition over there. So I think the urban Naxal mindset is something which we should take head on, and it is my request to Dr. Pandey to urgent that nationalism and nation first as an idea, as a syllabus, as a policy should be emphasized, should be taught to the students. Now, since security has taken a lot of time, and I have only covered 2 aspects of security, the third and most important is the financial security, the economic security, which I'm sure you would realize India is in a way better position than many of the countries which have lost sleep in the last 2 weeks, including Dubai. Dubai, which used to be a dream, stoppage or dream holiday or holiday home for many of the Indians. Now those Indians are planning to relocate back, and that includes some of our actors in Bollywood who have, who are always there for nationalist movie screenings, but who also spend most of the time in Dubai, are secretly planning to relocate to the country. That shows that at least the economic security, the financial security is completely taken care of. I will quickly move on to the other aspects. Stitch The second aspect is technology. There was a time about 10 years ago when we would encourage students, where we would encourage all those people who were not active participants in technology, that you should, download this app, download that app. In just the last 10 years, we have reached a stage where we are actually telling people to offload certain apps, where we are actually telling people that you need to ration, you need to actually filter your addiction towards technology. So today, AI is not a challenge. India is a world leader in AI. There is an AI vibrancy poll. India holds the third position after America and China. And of course, those who, there is also another acronym for AI. And we also saw that while the world was participating in India's Artificial Intelligence Summit, people who believed in the other AI, anarchist Indians, were protesting, with their clothes off. I don't know what message they were conveying, but in frustration also, one should maintain the decorum and one should maintain the dignity, because again, some of the urban Naxal minds were justifying the clothes removal. I'm just wondering whether the same would happen in parliamentary discussions in due course of time and on television debates. I hope better sense would prevail and artificial intelligence would be utilized for the right reason. But the challenge once again for this generation is not embracing AI. It is rationing and filtering out the negative impact of AI. And I think AI does impact your natural intelligence in some way. So while yes, you have all the tools at your disposal to assimilate, to gather information correctly, to utilize that information has to be your conscious choice. It has to be, your discernment. I stands for infrastructure. Infrastructure revolution is something which does not need to be explained. You have, in your vicinity today, from one airport in Delhi, I think there are 3 airports. Ghaziabad has its own airport, and then Greater Noida is going to have its own airport. Now, having airports or expanding infrastructure is one part of it. But it will be very interesting to study for you guys, for you students, to study the economic impact of it. When NCR expands right up to Greater Noida because of the airport, and obviously the expansion would be 50 kilometers beyond that, because as the airport is ready to be inaugurated and ready for operations, multiple other decisions have been taking place. So, for instance, there is an elevated corridor which will connect Faridabad to Greater Noida Airport. So, it will be very interesting for institutions like I.T.S to initiate a study into how infrastructure development is leading to changes in lifestyle, changes in quality of living, changes in educational choices, and changes in social behavior. Because, like I mentioned, all of these aspects has a hardware part to it, and one is the software part to it. The hardware is being created through physical infrastructure. But the software part is the change of mindsets. Last month, immediately after the RRTS the completed stretch of RRTS, 85 kilometer stretch was inaugurated between Sarai Khan and Modipuram in Meerut. I took a journey with a couple of friends to personally understand how it is impacting lives. And I met a few women who were traveling all the way from South Delhi to Meerut. 2 of them were working as bank employees who get transferred every 2 to 3 years. One of them was a professor. Now, many of of them were facing difficulties in personal life because of the massive amount of time they were spending in commuting from one place to the other. If they manage to reach home by 6, 6:30 and spend the rest of the time in quality time with their children, it impacts social life. It leads to happy families. It leads to, improved social behavior. Similarly, there are businessmen who used to take a small flat in Delhi while their families would stay in Mohan Nagar. They would manage to see their kids only during the weekends, especially on Sundays, because Saturdays is also working for half of the country. Now, for these people, it's a huge, huge sigh of relief. But infrastructure, again, is a very broad term. While infrastructure within the city is impacting social lives for the better, is bringing about improved quality of life, there are also massive changes taking place. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Great Nicobar project. A small stretch of island 400 kilometers south of the existing Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which has been lying vacant for eternity, is now being selectively developed right in the, it's barely about 50 kilometers from Strait of Malacca, through which 30% of the world's sea trade takes place. So imagine the kind of strategic advantage it is giving to India in the decades ahead, which will benefit maybe your generation or the generation to come. So both in terms of shipping of goods, shipping of essential commodities, shipping of energy requirements, as well as India's own strategic defense establishment shifting 400 kilometers south right in the Indian Ocean. That's a huge, huge futuristic plan which is being executed for you and your coming generation. There was a time when, obviously our previous generation, I don't want to blame anybody, but our previous generation perhaps generation of leaders felt that holding on to such a large landmass is not so important. So while one stretch of POK was given away, another island in Tamil Nadu, 𝐾𝐮𝐯𝐚, or if I'm pronouncing that, was given away in 1974, some parts of Northeast was given away. Today, India is expanding and getting some of the landmass which has never been used back for our future generation. That's the huge transformation that, when you talk of infrastructure, that is something you should not miss out on. The India-Middle East European corridor. Again, I'm not sure how many of them, because many of them may not be students of economics and business studies or global studies. But the India-Middle East European corridor is going to redefine the world's supply chain. I don't know, the impact of the war on the initial plan, because I'm sure the war will take many things behind. But India's Middle East European corridor is essentially an alternative for China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, which was crassly expansionist and which led to tech diplomacy, where many of the countries who sided with China eventually, especially Africa is obviously not a part of it, but China by nature has been expansionist. India by nature has been inclusionary, while retaining the same growth vision which China may have had for many decades. We have shown that same gumption to expand while being completely inclusive. Culture, when it comes to the sea, culture obviously, we have seen a massive cultural reawakening in the last few decades. And I'm sure many of you may be going back to practices like yoga, spirituality, which we had somewhere left behind over the years. As the world gets more and more obsessed with technology, more and more obsessed with screens, The need for spirituality, the need for yoga, the need for our ancient wisdom and practices will only and only grow. And health, obviously, H is the health part. Now, stitch needs to be merged with yuva. Yuva, that is youth, for optimal success, for maximum benefits. Yuva also has an acronym. Y stands for youth. While stitch is the hardware, yuva is the software. Y stands for youth, U stands for urja, which is energy. V stands for vivek, which is your sagacity, your wisdom, because the need for natural wisdom will only increase once you realize the pitfalls of artificial intelligence. And A stands for Akansha, which is ambition. I think this generation, for all the ease with which you get an access to resources, ease with which you get an access to, everything that we had to struggle for, needs to retain its individual ambition, which needs to merge with the larger ambition of the country. So I think on this note, I will, wind up this discussion. I understand most of you may be students of science and technology, management also. My only request to the institution is that as we go ahead, public policy, global studies are going to have the maximum impact upon citizens, and I think it's important that everyone, global studies and public policy should not be confined to these sessions. I think conversations even between family members ideally need to be more enriched. Dinner time conversations, I don't know how many have dinner time conversations because that's another challenge. The collapse of the family system or the challenges which the family system is witnessing, but we will reserve that for some other day. But I think it's important that these discussions make it to your Sunday discussions with your family members, your Sunday interactions with your friends, and over dinner time conversations with your parents. So thank you so much, and on this note, I would wind up this discussion.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience and word among us. Truly mentioned by sir, the 𝐸𝐤𝐤𝐢𝐭 Bharat Manifesto reflects the dreams, perspectives and responsibilities of young individuals who aspire to contribute meaningfully to the nation's development. Thank you so much, sir. Now we are open for the questions. We can take only 5 questions. Questions from the students.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is and I am from 𝐸𝐤𝐤𝐢𝐭 𝐁𝐡𝐚. My question is, what advice would you like to give to young people who want to participate in policy making or leadership, public leadership in India?
It's very important for you to read as much as you can. Read about developmental issues. Which newspapers do you read on a daily basis? Let me just make it a little, try to understand.
Times of India.
And which parts, like the economy, the business page, or because for the present generation, I see a lot of people not referring to newspapers at all. While we manage to get all our news on social media, on X, and through news channels, it is very important to retain the old habit of reading newspapers. And when you read newspapers, if you are interested in public policy and politics, it is very important to make sure, even if you don't read the complete edit page, know what is published in the op-ed page, which is the 9th or 10th page of most of the newspapers. The opinion page, or that is the page which spells out issues around policy and decision making. So it's important for you to have a thought process, to evolve a thought process of your own, be original, and make sure your thought process converges with national interest. That is very important, because some people have been, evolving a thought process which goes against national interest. That should not be the case.
Good afternoon, sir. I am 𝐘𝐮𝐯𝐚 of 𝐕𝐢𝐤𝐤 student. बेसिकली प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने कहा था कि हमारे देश में युवा हमारे देश की रीढ़ है, और विकसित भारत बनाने के लिए हम लोग 1 लाख युवाओं को एक तरीके से पॉलिटिक्स में लाएंगे। लेकिन आज के समय पे जैसे अगर जर्नलिस्ट स्तर पर देखा जाए तो 1 या 2 युवा हैं। मैं ये नहीं कह रही नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट है, पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट्स भी है, हमारा देश विकास कर रहा है। तो किस तरीके से युवा कैसे समाज में जाके, कैसे राजनीति में जा सकता है, पॉलिसी मेकिंग जैसे आपने एग्जाम्पल दिया, तो कैसे बना सकता है अपने देश को?
आप ये सवाल तब पूछ रहे हैं जब बीजेपी का सबसे युवा अध्यक्ष, इस वक्त बीजेपी का इतिहास में सबसे युवा अध्यक्ष बीजेपी को प्राप्त हुआ है। मात्र 46 वर्ष के माननीय नितिन नवीन जी अध्यक्ष बने, और आने वाले समय में कई युवा और आएंगे। लेकिन एक चीज आपको समझना होगा कि हाथ पकड़ के कोई आपको नहीं ला पाएगा, लेकिन अवसर निश्चित रूप से क्रिएट किए गए। यहाँ आपके पिताजी कौन से पद पर थे, उसको देखकर आपका पद तय नहीं होगा। तो यहाँ दरवाजे सबके लिए खुले हैं, लेकिन हाँ, मेहनत बहुत करनी पड़ेगी, और आवश्यकता पड़े तो कॉर्पोरेटर के इलेक्शन से बहुत ही बेसिक लेवल से शुरू करके आना पड़ेगा। क्योंकि देखिए, कुछ जो परिवारवादी राजनीतिक पार्टियां हैं, उनमें एक पात्रता की मानसिकता है, हैव अ सेंस ऑफ एंटाइटलमेंट, सो दे want to start from the very top. That is one of the reasons why they waste very crucial years. But in the BJP, you will find many people who started off at 21, 22 as corporators. Devendra Fadnavis is a classic example. He was a corporator, and today he is the chief minister. You don't know the future, what he will be in the next 10 years. But I think it's important to start from whichever opportunity you get, instead of being entitled and thinking that I will start only when I get a particular opportunity, because that wastes a lot of crucial years. And the ones who have really done well without any pedigree, without any family backing, are those who managed to start it.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, I'm from 𝐕𝐤𝐤 first year. So my question is, what do you think are the biggest challenges today's Indian youth facing, and how they overcome to contribute for development of India?
Well, there are many challenges. I think mindset is the biggest challenge, because like I said, it was a change of mindset which brought about massive changes in the last 12 years, which had been lacking in the country. For example, I will give you some examples away from that goes beyond what I said in the speech. Today, the scale at which semiconductor manufacturing has been initiated in the country, ideally that should have been done 3 decades ago. The way we are going all out to ensure rare earth minerals, which is the most critical part in the critical component in the manufacturing of semiconductors. In fact, some of the recent trips, when the opposition keeps mocking the foreign trips of our Prime Minister कि आपको ब्राजील जाने की क्या जरूरत थी, अर्जेंटीना जाने की क्या जरूरत थी, जहां उनकी सोच खत्म होती है, वहां हमारी सोच शुरू होती है. So many of these countries today, whether it is Argentina, whether it is Brazil, these are the countries with which we have deals for acquiring rare earth minerals, which will play the most pivotal part in semiconductor manufacturing. And I don't need to emphasize the importance of semiconductor in almost every electronic gadget that we are using. This manufacturing, the manufacturing trust, along with the supply chain route which we are creating, which I don't know when it will fructify now in the aftermath of the war, the India-Middle East European corridor. So imagine the vision behind it. While making India a manufacturing hub, the idea is also to ensure seamless supplies right up to Europe, to ensure that India's exports, get to the right markets. Unfortunately, this vision was lacking 12 years ago. So, that's that. Thank you, sir.
सवाल था कि भारत को विकसित देश बनाने के लिए स्टूडेंट्स का तरीका क्या होना चाहिए पढ़ने का?
जो एक सबसे बड़ा क्रूशियल गुरु मंत्र मैं यही बताऊंगा कि आप प्रेरणा भले सबसे बटोरें. You may draw inspiration from everybody. Make sure that you don't lose your originality. क्योंकि जब आप केवल दूसरे ने क्या इस तरह से उसने कामयाबी अर्जित की, इस तरह से सफलता अर्जित की, अगर उस राह पे पूरी तरह चलेंगे, तय करनी है इंस्पिरेशन 10 लोगों से बटोरे, लेकिन अपनी ओरिजिनलिटी को बरकरार रखते हुए. ये बहुत जरूरी है.
Thank you, sir. I request and invite our respected director,